Yeah. Wonder if you logged in twice. That used to do it at work. Deb Davis.
For a moment. Let me get my hair out of my. Okay, we're getting ready to get started here. I'm Deb, and 3 years ago, we wanted to get a chapter started for the, can you mute her or not? For this area. And now I think Florida has 3 other chapters that are just starting up. But we've been operating for about 3 years now. And we're very excited that each month now we have a speaker that comes and tells their story, their experience. It's not necessarily a near-death experience story. It might be an out-of-body experience or an after-death communication from someone. But all of them are unique and special to them. And so you leave here, I hope, with a feeling of purpose and hope for your time here on earth. And then when you transition, you know somewhat about where you're going, who you're going to meet. And it's just it's a wonderful feeling. And I've said this before, it's like going to church on steroids, because you're actually meeting wonderful people like our speaker, Tom, today. He's a part of our board. He was our very first speaker in May, 3 years ago. So we've come full circle, and we're celebrating that today. We're celebrating Angie's birthday, which was yesterday. And we're celebrating Memorial Day. We're celebrating all the veterans that gave their life for our freedom in our country. And one of those is my husband, Mike, and he's in the back. And so just a little bit about me and this organization again. I got involved in learning about near-death experiences almost 10 years ago, and I've learned a lot, and I have a lot more to learn. But it was the reason I needed to learn about this is I had lost a mother. Then 4 months later, I lost a husband. And 4 months later, I lost my dad. And then 6 months later, my dog of 17 years transitioned. And so all those impact me. They were making me think and making me wonder, where did all those people go? I knew my dog went to heaven, but other than that, I wasn't sure. And my friend, Lynn Grace, who actually is my partner in this whole journey, she was way ahead of me in spiritual knowledge and enlightenment. And she had been going to the conferences, the SCIANDS conferences. And she said, Deb, you need to go on YouTube and listen to some of these other people that have had near-death experiences. So I started like you, some of you have done. And I started reading books, and then I started going to conferences with Lynn, and I just learned so much. And then finally, right before she was transitioning, she got cancer and she was transitioning, we decided that we would be co-facilitators for an organization like this. And I know some of you have heard this story. But Lynn passed away in February, and we were just supposed to start in March. That is when COVID hit, all that. So we got started in May. And I'm so glad that I followed what she was trying to help me. I know she was helping me all along the way. And she showed me some different things that proved that to me, which I won't go into today. But I just know that she's with me today. She's she's happy that you're all here. We have a great group today. And we have so many people on Zoom now, which I'm trying to get that process better. But anyway, I'm happy you're here. We do a little drawing because you're here. You've made this special effort to be here and you put your name on a little card. So if you would draw a lucky name, I'll let you call that name out. Okay, there you go. And it's that smaller bag, that small. Yes, and we thank you for being here. And we hope that when you use that little gift, you'll remember this meeting and what you got out of it. We hope that you've come here today. I always say this, with an open heart, open mind, and that you allow whatever Tom or I say help you and support you. I'd like to say that this is a meeting where we all gather in a circle and we tell our own story. And I promise we will have meetings like that in 2025. But this year we were so blessed. I sent out an email to some speakers that I knew of, and they all responded and said, yeah, I want to speak. So we filled up the whole calendar for 2024. And we're already into 2025. Tom has spoke twice. We've had Candy, she's spoken 3 times. And we've had a few people come back, and we love that. Because like today, I know many of you are new, and so you haven't heard Tom's experience, and that it's going to be great for you to hear it. And I always find that when I hear someone's talk a second or third time, I learn something even more intriguing about them. I listened to Tom's, he had an interview, and I listened to that. I just went, oh, wow, I don't remember him saying that. That is so interesting. And it, you know, so you learn, I don't know, you can only absorb so much, right? Particularly at our age, you just go, 5%, I'm going to get 5% today. So if you can get 5% today, come back for next month. Next month, we have a very interesting speaker. She's going to come on June 30th, not on the 23rd, but on June 30th. We changed it. There was a little glitch in my calendar, I'll just say. But I changed it to June 30th instead of the 23rd. It's the last Sunday of the month. And we're having Laura Lee Drake come via Zoom. Unfortunately, she lives up north. But she's coming to share all of her experiences. She's had 4 or 5 near-death experiences, starting at the age of 7. So it is going to be so interesting to hear her stories and how they have changed her life. And that is one of the things you'll see the thread in all of these near-death stories, is that it almost always changes that person's life, and for the better in most cases. But if they've had a near-death experience and they've been sent back, they've been transformed. But you don't have to, and this is what I want to say to someone, you don't have to have an actual death experience to be spiritually transformed. You can do that yourself here through, and I'm learning this, through meditation and getting, I'm practicing that because I'm terrible at meditating, but I am doing a monthly meditation guided with Serena. Some of you know her. And I would recommend that you look her up and get into Serena Baptista's, into her meditation classes. They're wonderful if you need to meditate and reach another level that I think most of you would benefit from. All right. With that being said, I think we've covered all of what I wanted to just up front tell you. We are going to meet today after this meeting for anyone that would like to join us at Carrabba's in Merritt Island. If you didn't get that message, I'm very sorry. But I would like for you to treat yourself. I would love to treat all of you to this meal, but I cannot. I'm sorry. But I would love for you to join us. And that may be a time where you can talk with someone one-on-one. And we'll meet there right about 5:15 today. So if you'd like to join us for dinner, please join us. How many of you think you will join us right now? You can wait until later. So we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So we have, and then Mike and I, that makes 10 of us. And so I'll call into Carrabba's and get us a table for 10. It seems like about 5 o'clock is not, we get there before the early birds, actually. So anyway, all right. Now, the best part of today is meeting Tom. Tom is just a guy that is just full of humor. I think if I lived around him, I don't know about Roz, but he would have me laughing half the day. I'm sure he has his serious moments, but he is a funny guy, a genuine guy. And I don't want to spoil his story by telling a lot about him. You've read a lot about him through the emails that I've sent to you. But he is just such an interesting guy that wears a lot of different hats. And before he died and went to heaven, I just want to say this one thing. I think he wore a black hat, a black cowboy hat. He was kind of a mean guy. But when he came back, he had on a white hat. And I think that he has helped so many people with his story. And now I think he's said, and I'm so glad to hear this, that he's writing a book. And I even told him I'd help him edit it if he wanted me to. That's a whole nother story about why I think I'm good at editing. But anyway, I do think that people that have a near-death story should get it in writing and then get it published if they can, because it reaches that many more thousands of people. It's great that he's telling his story today to 25 of us and the people online. It's great, but the story would be more impactful if it was told to thousands. And that's why I like to see people like Tom doing interviews on the internet and YouTube, because they're sharing with so many more people. And the more people that we get enlightened and spiritually aware, the better our world will be. Every one of us, when we leave here today, will be better people because of Tom's story. So let's welcome Tom.
I don't know how to follow that. That's
Get you a white hat.
yeah, yeah. I actually have a black one, so
Oh, you need to
when Deb asked me to do this, I wanted to make sure I gave the most complete presentation that I've done in a long time. So I took copious notes and I put bullet points out, and it shouldn't take us long to get through that. So, oh no, that's wrong book.
He has a Reader's Digest version.
So I'm going to do this way. My name is Tom. My last death was about 16 years ago. And every near-death experience is different and unique. And if you weren't here earlier, I want to bring this back up again. If you read 2 Corinthians 12:2, the Apostle Paul talks about a man who went to the third level of heaven and returned, and whether he did it in spirit or body, only God knows. In my mind, that's the first NDE. And so we've been having the NDE experiences for thousands and thousands of years, and there are millions of us out there. But I will tell you, I was born in 1960. The president was Dwight David Eisenhower. The president-elect was John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy's assassination is my first memory. I remember it clearly, although I was 2 years old. By the time I was 10, we had had the Cuban Missile Crisis, Vietnam War, the Civil Rights Movement had begun and come to a boiling point, the assassination of Robert Kennedy, the assassination of Martin Luther King. Man had landed on the moon, And the best thing of all, Woodstock. So something was in the air, but it wasn't just my diapers. I had a very hardworking father. He was a pipe fitter. I had a very loving mother. I had two siblings, one 12 years older, one 7 years older. My mom was the one who was loving, encouraging, and spent time with me. She also made the best cakes in the world. Chocolate and vanilla and anyway. From her, I learned love, patience, and understanding. I actually was seeing my guardian angel until the age of 5. And then I made the mistake of telling my brothers. I haven't seen Sahara since. I was under constant comparisons to my brother. Why wasn't I just like them? And I want to make it clear, I thought I had a pretty normal childhood, but then I realized our normal becomes our normal. And so it was good to me. But I also learned that I would never be as good as them. I learned that I had to defend myself physically and mentally. When I say physically, they would play baseball with me as the batter. And they would throw the ball at my head to see if I could hit it. That's how I learned to be quick. My hands, anyway. Body didn't help any other way. No matter how hard I tried, I just was not good enough. Genetics hadn't been kind to me, they say. I would never amount to anything. Big boys don't cry. So I stopped. If you see me ever crying nowadays, it's because of the NDE. Children are to be seen and not heard. But most importantly, I learned that I didn't matter. Then I went to Roman Catholic Elementary School. We do well, and thank you for acknowledging that. I am recovering, so I appreciate that. When I went to Roman Catholic Church, I learned discipline, increasingly higher expectations, and punishment. I learned that I was a born sinner. And for those of you who've never looked up the word sin in the original Hebrew, it means short of the mark. So I was raised being told that I was short of the mark, but I already knew that. I was plagued with feelings of not being fitting in, not being smart enough, private school. And then I would go home. I also learned that nuns are deadly accurate with erasers. And I also learned the sound the yardstick makes when it cracks over your head. Okay? And they knew with the erasers, by the time you got home, you couldn't get it all off your clothes, so you knew you would get trouble as soon as you walked through your door. They were smart. They were smart. In the 3rd grade, I had my first NDE. I've had 3 altogether. I don't remember much about it, so I won't go into it today. In the 5th grade, I read a book by Robert Silverberg, a science fiction novel, and I took off. I read Asimov, I read all kinds of stuff. I'm really glad that the guy named Elon Musk reads the same things I did. Makes me feel strong. In 1972, I went to this thing called the summer playground. The summer playground is where you had different activities, and I got involved in playing soccer. Now, they put me on defense, not because I was accurate with a ball or anything else. It was because I was very slow, because I was very fat. and I ate a lot of mom's cakes. The most important lesson I learned in Roman Catholic school was that when I die, I go to the pearly gates. St. Peter will judge my life and tell me which direction I'm going. And based on everything I had learned so far, my prospects weren't very good. Then came high school. I like to say it was the perfect combination of hormones, peer pressure, and pimples. And if there's anybody in this room who didn't have pimples, I want to know why. I could read people like a book until I realized they didn't want to be read like a book. I made two friends that I've stayed friends with continuously for 50 years. I made many other friends that I still talk to today. I kept hearing, don't take things personally. Please, don't take things personally. But yet I could feel what the words were intended to be. I was destined to go to the seminary. You can picture me in the seminary. That was until 10th grade and the girl kissed me. That was the end of that. I became the class clown for acceptance. And I appreciate that I made it that far. But my mind was always, it sounded like our marching band, which was 300 pieces, rattling from my left ear to my right ear, and my right ear to my left ear. That was my life. I could not look myself in a mirror. And I'm not trying to depress you all. When you see this side of it, and you see the other side of it, where we're going, you need to know how big that difference really was. That was pretty close. I was deathly afraid of dying because of all I've been through and where they said I was going. And on graduation day, my father told me that he loved me and that he was proud of me for the first and only time in my life. And those who were trying to track, that was 1978. I worked a lot of jobs. I tried to work as hard as I could, but I kept hearing I wasn't good enough. I wouldn't amount to anything. I was wrong about everything, even if later on it proved to be right. Outwardly, I was polite, humorous. Inside, I was self-loathing. I couldn't stand to be in my own company. I don't know how other people did it. My second NDE was in 1980 during the surgery I had. After that, I left the Catholic Church and I began looking on my own. I joined the fire department as a firefighter and an EMT, and I also became their chaplain for a while. I even did stand-up comedy. Now, I appreciate the two other people that laughed, but that was good. So I got married and I got divorced. My father died the same year. But don't fear, I got married again. And I have a wonderful son, 31-year-old son. And divorced again. But don't fear, I got married again. That didn't work either. I'm divorced there. I was compassionate and passionate about my sports and my sports teams. I played soccer for way too long. And I kept seeing the number 43. I had no idea what it meant. Douglas Adams didn't talk about 43, he talked about 42. So I did not know what that was. People would walk up to me and tell me their life stories, and I could care less. I had my own issues I was dealing with. It wasn't that I didn't try, but I became a photographer and a DJ. Why? Because I could be away from the crowd, but yet still be a participant. So that's how I socialized. I was published in a major magazine. I've had an art show, but I couldn't appreciate it. I knew I'd never be good enough. I basically spent my whole life proving them all right. Weighing in at 285 pounds at 5'8". Then I quit drinking and eating French fries because somebody made me mad. I lost 100 pounds and then I died, which is probably the best way to do it. So here we are, February 27th of 2008. The sun was shining, the sky was blue. Little did I know that I was going to end up in the ICU. I didn't notice that until I did it, and I was like, oh, wow. I'm being an EMT, I was familiar with the surroundings and what went on in the hospital. I just wasn't used to being the one they were working on. I could reach my hands out on either side and touch equipment. I could hear the heart monitor, which was behind me to my right. And I had a doctor on this side and a nurse on this side. And at some point, the nurse leaned over, put her face like right here, and said, Mr. Leach, please open your eyes. We need you to stay with us. Please open your eyes. And I stared at her and I said, I'm here. I'm looking at your blue eyes, your blonde hair, and you're wearing a pink schmuck. But she didn't hear me. I also started noticing, and as a photographer, you notice these things, that the angle in which I was looking at her was changing. I started seeing more of her forehead. When you hear the heart monitor stop, and you know it's your heart monitor, your priorities change a little bit. And the doctor and the nurse went from trying to figure it out to trying to save my life, which they did. While I was dead, no other word to use it, I felt an area that was all black. Neil Donald Walsh calls it nothingness. I saw a bright light way off in the distance, but without motion or sound, that light all of a sudden was all around me. And it was peaceful, it was loving, it was comfortable. I'm from up north, so what we do in winter is we grab a nice big fuzzy blanket and wrap up in it, and that's how I felt at that moment. I was thinking about, did I turn off the water? Did I call my mother? I hope I left the dog out. All these things are going through my head, and then all of a sudden, the pieces started dropping together. She said, my eyes weren't open. She said, kind of figured out I wasn't in Kansas anymore. It just, the realization that comes to you slowly. Now, again, I want to go back to everybody's experience is different. This is what happened to me. The first thing I smelled was aqua velva. A lot of you know what that is. That was my dad. Now, we didn't get along very well while he was alive, obviously. But yet he was the first one to meet me. The next thing I had was this on my leg, and it was my dog tapping. My grandparents were there. There were thousands of people there to greet us. They're happy to welcome us home. Because that's what home really is. That's where we come from. There was, I can only use the word angel because, as you know, we've already discussed, I was ruined by the Catholic Church. I mean, no. I knew, though, at some point, somebody was going to say, well, you didn't quite make the mark. And I wasn't going to go on the high road. I was fairly certain I was taking the low road. Now, the only good news is all my friends would have been there as well, so I wouldn't have been alone. It's like a piece of mom's cake, is what I felt like. Inside, outside, wrapped around me, in my head, love, peace, comfort, and my angel was with me the whole time. Now, we all will have a life review. And in my life review, I only talk about two of them, but literally you go through your whole life. I have a picture of the first one, and that is when my son was young, we had to feed him with a bottle. And I was holding him and feeding him a bottle, and I could feel him moving in the blanket. And I remembered his mother taking a picture, and I still have that picture with me today. They told me that display of unconditional love is the ultimate that they're looking for. But we judge ourselves. Remember that. We judge ourselves. The second thing I talk about was not a very good thing. It was a conversation with someone that I had been dating that I wasn't very nice. I'll say rude. But I heard the telephone conversation from her end of the conversation. I had never been in her dorm room, but yet I'm looking around her dorm room, listening to her talk to me. And it gave me a whole new perspective on that conversation. It made me extremely sad. So I did the first thing I never thought I would do in heaven, and that is cry. And that's when the angel wrapped his wing around me and said, remember, here too you are learning. And I got to tell you, all that Catholic guilt just went. We have been learning. And when we go back, they show us what we did, and we get to make choices on what we did. But we judge ourselves, and we're far too hard on ourselves. There was a point where I knew that I was not staying in heaven. I didn't like it. I didn't want it. I liked the peace. I liked the quiet. I liked the love. Why would you think I would want to go back? And I did the second thing I thought I'd never do in heaven, and that is argue with an angel. Obviously, I thought I argued eloquently, but here we are. When they sent me back, they said, remember to love. And it echoed in my mind like a B movie, just this echo sound. Remember to love, remember to love, remember to love. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I supposed to remember to love? Because they weren't real specific. The next thing I know, I'm back in the dark tunnel. And I felt like the light had just caressed me down and let me in the dark. And then all of a sudden, I started hearing a heart monitor. And then I started hearing other machines. And I decided I better open my eyes. And I was back. It was early in the morning, so it was dark out. And I had gone in somewhere around noon. And sometime along the way, they did a stent. They inputted a stent. And I don't remember any of that. They had to transfer me through at least 3 different rooms. And then when I woke up, I got this 70-pound weight on my leg. And I'm like, what the hell happened? At first, I thought I was crazy. Really good training, but I just thought it was crazy. The following morning, I made the doctors mad because I checked myself out. Now, I just had a heart attack. I was an EMT. I just had a stent put in. I should have known better. But I also knew that I was okay. God had my back. I knew that. So I signed myself out. I made a lot of enemies that day. I went home and I thought I was crazy. I spent 20 out of 24 hours for 3 days in a row crying. And I mean bawling like you could not believe. And my sanity was definitely in question, just like a lot of you are thinking now. Okay, so we're at that point where what happens next? Okay, it's good to have a life. It's wonderful to have an experience, but what did it do for you? That racing mind of mine had gone quiet. Kind of like when a noisy neighbor moves out and all of a sudden you notice how quiet it is around there. They're talking to me, so I'm sorry. It becomes a different perspective on life. I met Neil Donald Walsh, by the way, who's got a great set of books, gone a little over the edge, we call woo-woo. But he's the most peaceful man I'd ever met in my life. There wasn't any angst in that man. And these are the things that I sensed in people. So when I met him and I didn't feel anything but peace, I knew that was genuine. In April that year, I met the man who used to have the hot dog cart in our town. And that still little voice in my head said that would be a really good idea. And 3 weeks later, I was open. And I did that for 4 years in the center of my little town, made enough money to get by. But no one walked past me without a smile, without me saying hello. And whether you bought anything from me or not, you were going to be happy when you walked past me. I was right in front of the courthouse too. it's had the hot dog. I had people who would come out and eat around the cart every day, which I told them not to do. The doctors would go crazy. But we had our own little club. We talked. One guy was going through a divorce. We talked. I listened to his story and I cared. And I felt like I could make a difference. That happened to the entire town for me. All of a sudden, I'm connected to everybody. Now, I graduated with 800 people, and most of them still lived nearby. So I knew a lot of people, but I cared about more people. There was one time, a guy comes up and he starts talking to me, and he's telling me this story about him and his buddy. They went and they did this, that, and the other thing. And I'm sitting there listening to him, and I'm going, yeah, I know, I was there. I was the other guy. He had no idea who I was. So when I finally said, hey, you remember when you fell off the ledge? And he looked at me in shock. Like, how? And once he figured out who it was a nice reunion. But how can you go and meet people that you grew up with and they not know you unless something changed? That example of the black hat and the white hat might be appropriate. While I was sweeping around the cart, I kept the area very clean. The town executive came up and asked me if I knew anybody would be interested in sweeping the 3-block area of Main Street. And I asked, how much you pay? So I ended up doing that at 4 o'clock in the morning. At 4 o'clock in the morning in Maryland, it can be a little cold, can have a little snow. But I went out there every day. It's so quiet that you can hear when the red goes to yellow and the yellow goes to green. I'd never heard that before. And I got the opportunity to talk to God. One-on-one, in the air, we had conversations. And if I got something right, he would give me a quarter. Now, our town had parking meters. But I don't know a single person, no matter how drunk they are, they left these quarters on the sides of buildings, on handles, not on the ground. If I was close, but I didn't quite get it, I got a dime, and I'd be like, really? Seriously? And while going through this, I want you to understand, to me, when you pray to God, then you meditate and listen to the answers. They go hand in hand. Now, I was taught that you pray to a saint who talk to Jesus, who might put a note into God and somebody will get back to me. But now I'm having one-on-one conversations with God. Now, does that mean everything was great? No. I had forgotten that I needed $100 to pay a bill, or I had closed my cart. And I needed it that day, and I didn't have it. And I took 3 steps, and I heard a crunch. And under my foot, there was a brand new $100 bill. The exact amount I had asked for. Now, I used to believe in coincidences, but there aren't any coincidences. Everything is related. I sought out that woman that I told you about that I wasn't very nice to, and I apologized to her. And I understand she's done very well in her life, and I'm very glad I had the opportunity to correct at least one wrong that I had made. I started practicing random acts of kindness, but I no longer feared death. When I say I feared death, okay, I was deathly afraid of dying and dying and dying. Okay, those thoughts were gone. I actually wanted to go home. And that's something that happens to a lot of near-death experiences. We feel that pull to go home, and that sometimes can make us feel a little depressed. I ended up hitting the last divorce, relocated to Virginia Beach, where I became a oneness blessing giver, which is the same blessing that Jesus used. And I became an ordained minister in the order of Melchizedek, which is what Jesus was. Integration is a lifelong process. Sometimes things are good, sometimes things not so much, but you learn to look at things with a different perspective. Now, one time, recently, for a period of 4 years, I was very sick. I was down to 145 pounds, and I was vomiting gallons on a regular basis, about every 3 weeks. 3 times to the hospital. I was in so much pain that a woman who was there said, you know, what's wrong with you? And said, well, they said that I had pancreatitis. And she said, I've had 3 kids, and I would gladly have 10 more and never feel the pain of pancreatitis again. It changes your perspective of everything. But I had died. So I prayed more when I was sick than ever before. And I would have gladly gone at any moment. And I actually asked for it several times. It was not a fun thing to go through. With the help of some friends and some doctors, I got functional again after about 2.5 years, right? Yeah. I still feel the pain from time to time, but it's manageable. It's God's reminder that there's something there. So no, it has not always been easy. I have not remembered everything. But my gratitude is immense. I'm grateful for God, for my family, and for my country. I don't see anything wrong with that, but that's where we are today. Where we come from is unconditional love. We don't have to go anywhere else. There is no judgment. Unconditional love. When we feel something passionately, when we cry, we smile, we grieve, there's a lot of lessons in grief. Gratitude enables us to get closer to God. And this is the most important thing for folks who have lost someone else. Where we all go, and notice I say that very specifically, we all go to heaven. We may have had different missions when we came here to this playground, but we are welcome home every time. I've stressed that we pay attention. I call them cosmic 2x4s. It can be a little nudge, Can be a phone call. Could be somebody taking a swing at you. Or a guy taking a nice big 2x4 to the back of your head. Sometimes we're not paying attention to what God is saying. If we don't listen, we don't hear. So we need to listen. And the people that talk to you are your relatives, friends. And I wasn't going to talk about this, but I'll leave you with this. When my mom passed away, we, in our family, everybody came back to the house and we fed them, and that was all the time. And then once everybody left and the house was almost empty, I started hearing the tinkling of aluminum foil. Like somebody was trying to get into something aluminum foil. So I thought there was still somebody there. No, it wasn't. It was my dad. He loves chocolate cake. He was trying to get out of it. My mom was born in 1929. I wore 29 as my uniform number for a long time. And I told you earlier, I started seeing the number 43. And if you see numbers like 1111 or something like that, there's a meaning behind it. 29 was the year my mother was born. 43 was the year my father met my mother. That's why I don't tell that. So if you don't feel right now that somebody isn't watching over you, you're not paying attention. Listen, they're here with us all the time. Your husband, your friend, your wife. I don't know how many others in the room have lost somebody that close, but they are with you all the time. So every time I see a 29 or a 43, I know that they are talking to me and telling me they love me. The last thing my mother said was she was sorry she couldn't protect me. And it took me a long time to figure out what she meant. But once I figured it out, I understood what the love a mother has for their children. And as a guy, I will never stand in between that. So I hope that you've had a good time. I try to keep it funny sometimes. I hope I've touched someone's heart. Just one. Somewhere across the planet, that's fine by me. I want you to remember to love yourself, because that's where it starts. I forgot. When I was a teenager and I had all these things said to me, I let my hair grow long. Well, it gets about that long and then it curls. So if you wanted to look cool, you had to roll your hair with the hairdryer while it was drying. And I learned to do that without looking at a mirror. It's amazing what we can do. But now I don't have any hair, so I don't have to worry about it. Any questions, thoughts, or comments? I'm happy people are still awake. Yes, sir. Oh, I did leave that out. I apologize. Thank you. I died from a heart attack. I went to the gym and I did a 5-mile power walk with my Walkman. How old? I went from there to the hot tub, to the pool, to the locker room, got in the shower, went and sat down to get dressed. And normally, I would put my pants on first and then put my shirt on. But I couldn't stand up. I was weak. I could not stand up. So I asked one of the attendants, I said, I hadn't had anything to eat. Could you give me some orange juice? I thought maybe I just needed a boost. While I was trying to put on my shirt, I couldn't sit up anymore. I had to lay down. And I told the attendant to call 911. And that's kind of where a little bit of knowledge and a lot of emotion come running head into each other. The paramedic came in, he put the leads on me, he went to take them off, and I knew what he was doing. He was moving them to the other side because that's protocol for a heart attack. So I looked at him, I said, I know, let's just go. He said, you're full blown, gave me nitro, and then we were 5 minutes from the hospital. So I can never say that I wasn't blessed from beginning to end that day. It was a miracle. The second closest hospital would have been 45 minutes away, maybe, and I wouldn't have made it. And that's what they told me. So, is that it? Okay. I want to make sure I covered it all. Anybody else?
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for coming. I really do appreciate it.
I think your story hit a lot of hearts.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Curious about a couple things.
Sure.
The first thing is when you were in heaven and you were so afraid that, you know, any minute you were gonna be told you were going another direction.
Oh, yeah.
At what point did you figure out that wasn't gonna happen?
That was probably when the angel had said to me that at that moment of my greatest fear, that was when we were all still learning. So once it became a lesson up here, the fear went away. It's with anything. If you understand the why, you can figure out anything. Engineers will tell you that. You know, writers will tell you that. You know, I'm in amazement of J.K. Rowling because she created a world, an entire world that we got to be part of. And that takes a lot. Star Wars. Great movies, great story. What is the Force? May the Force be with you. What if what he was meaning was God? But he couldn't say it on the movies. So let the Force be with us, right? Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. No, you're only allowed one. No, I'm sorry.
The first time,
Oh.
from the time that the nurse said you look at me,
Mm-hmm.
right, to the time that you are back,
Mm-hmm.
how much time are we talking about?
I have no idea really, hours, and I can only say that because the sun was shining when I went in, and it was like maybe 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. It was that dark when I woke up. So I have no idea, literally, no idea how long they had me out. So now, sometimes you'll hear people talk about their NDEs, and they've got these long stories, but they're only going for 10 minutes. That's not unusual. That can happen. So the perception of time for me was, I was wrapped up.
And you never found out how much time there was?
I didn't care. When I woke up, I signed the papers. It took me 10 minutes to get the doctor. It took me an hour to get him to agree to give me the papers. It took me 2 seconds to sign them, and I was out the door. And I didn't want to hear a word he said. And I was actually mad at him because he went out into the hallway to talk to my wife at the time and tried to convince her that I needed to stay for 3 days. But I knew better. God kept me strong enough. Now, did that make it easy? No. I was afraid to climb the set of basement stairs. I was afraid to cut the grass. Because I knew that would kill me. I was afraid of everything until that integration started happening and things appeared different than they were. And then that makes a big difference when you're dealing with people. Does that mean that I don't fall into complete humanness? Absolutely not. There is nothing about me that isn't 100% human, good, bad, or indifferent. But I was lucky enough that I got to experience just a little bit of what we all will experience. And maybe afterwards I'll share some experiences that would rather not go over the internet. So when I did this original presentation in its PDF format, I did my slides. When I finished and I looked, there were 43 slides. So we've reached the 43rd slide. So let's go have some cake. Yes, ma'am.
11:11, what is your interpretation of that?
Oh, wow, there are so many, so many. I know, I can tell you that 12:12 is completion. But 11:11, I know they're speaking to us, but I'm not 100% clear on what that particular one represents, because I have little familiarity with it personally. I was more interested in finding out the numbers that I was seeing everywhere. License plates, the serial numbers of tractor trailers, boats. I forgot about boats. I lived in Maryland. Boats. Boat be going by and last number is 43. I loved it. One day I saw a license plate that was 432943. And that was when I was up in Virginia. And I know that they're talking to you and letting you know they're there as if they were here. But I don't. If you have something, you can enlighten me.
I've heard that it's an indication of ascension,
Ascension, okay.
where we've all come back to this life
Mhm.
over and over again to learn lessons each time. Sometimes just a single thing is all we're here for, and when that happens, that's the guy that falls over dead in the parking lot.
Absolutely.
But ascension is, this might be your last time, that maybe you have earned that.
That's an interesting, I'll have to look into that one. I've not heard that one.
Yeah, the right to be able to choose whether you want to come back or not.
Now, I have heard that. What we do when we go back, we're greeted and then we get a chance to pick
Get a choice.
where we want to go, what we want to do, who we want to be.
What environment, so that you can
Right.
learn the lessons and you can
Yeah,
learn.
there's a reason why my mother was the shining example of loving and not so much the rest of the family. And that was the environment I needed to learn in. I'll admit it, I made friends with a psychologist, not psychologist, no, I'm lost on the word. That's the word. Thank you. A psych, and she was very good. And we were, fairly close. And she, probably within the first 10 minutes of talking to me, she said, what the hell were you doing with that family? Because she could see that I was the oddball. But I knew that. I didn't need her to tell me that. But yeah, you're right. We set up what it is we want to learn. And I've heard we even pick our parents. I've heard that.
Yeah.
And
Even when you're born into maybe a less than stellar environment.
Right.
It's
You've
by
chosen.
choice.
right,
There's some value that your soul needs to gain from that.
exactly,
experience.
exactly. Now, I know someone who had a baby that was born not living. Trauma is tremendous for that. But that baby, all it wanted was to thank her because what she did was let this person have the birth experience. And that's all they wanted.
I've heard
That tragedy,
a very
really wasn't.
motivated soul that
Yeah.
chooses to do that and
Mhm.
go through that. And, there is some lesson, some value for those parents and all
Yes.
that tragedy that they're there, that they need to learn as well.
my mom would tell you she hates to cook. While she was making dinner, when you sat down, oh, this is horrible and this is. So she hated cooking dinner. And she passed in 2011. And not long afterwards, I have an aunt, and this might surprise you, but it doesn't me. My aunt is a cloistered nun, way up north. And we talked on the phone, and she said, I talked to your mother today. Now, after I got up off the floor, I was like, oh, really? What did she say? And she told me that she was wearing a purple dress, which is her favorite color. She was running around with a crown on her head and a wand, bopping people on the head. And I call it her penance, but she's probably not. She's teaching people how to cook. I was done. I couldn't laugh any harder. But that's what happens. She's teaching all these. Now, this question comes up a lot when I mention that. Why do we have 5, 6, 7-year-old prodigies that can play the piano as if it were a harp? Why? Because they learn before they came here. Why would they learn? Because that's what they chose. So this is
The more you know, the more it all makes sense.
absolutely.
All those questions that seem random, coincidental, but there is no such thing.
No such thing as a quinky dance. No. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for your presentation. Since your experiences would you say that you are in regular or constant contact with God or your higher self?
I will tell you, I struggled when I was sick with the pancreatitis. Just so you got it all. It's acute chronic pancreatitis is idiopathic, which means they have no idea what causes it. There were times laying on that bed with the bucket in my face where I couldn't get connected to anything. And there was times recently where I couldn't connect to anything, but it's starting to come back. And it's coming back full force sometimes, which I'm grateful for. But yeah, we lose it. If we don't practice it, we don't you know, you play professional soccer, you only play one game a week, but you work 5 days a week practicing your craft. Well, we do that in heaven. We practice our craft. We come here, we do all this stuff, we complain about it, and then we go back and we figure out, oh, that's what I was there for.
Wiped out on birth, all that knowledge.
Yeah.
Wiped out on birth.
Completely wiped out on birth, on purpose. They must use a staple gun for me. Yeah, we forget everything.
We're supposed to learn.
Exactly. It's intentional. If we came in and we go back to those kids that learn how to play piano at 5 and 6 years old, they come into the world and they know that. That's the easy part for them. It's the other stuff that's harder. There's one savant, I cannot remember his name. He plays by sound. He can't read a note, but his guy he's been working with all these years, he says, oh, you want to play this song? And he's like, yeah. And it was like the first time he ever played it. The guy's absolutely amazing. There are those here in the world. So, any other questions? Yes, sir.
Before you came back
Uh-huh.
and everything, were you asked or told to find purpose for your life, or did you do that on your own?
They sent me back with it in the remember to love. And that means remember to learn to love yourself. Remember to love people around you. Remember to love people even if you don't like them. I won't use the H word, but if that's how you feel about somebody, that's okay. Doesn't matter. You just be yourself. So yeah, when they kicked me out, and yes, I do use that term because I didn't want to go. That remember to love stuck with me until I woke up. Well, stuck with me for many more years, 16 years now. But that was the message that they gave to me. I honestly believe that if I did not have that experience and was told to learn to love myself, we would not be here having this conversation. It would have been a one-way trip, probably gone out with a lot of glory and flames and car parts all over the place. But I was blessed enough to where I went silent. We don't all get to do that, and I know next time around it's not going to be that easy. But every NDE has a purpose, and it starts from the very beginning. How I was, off. Even that, the location of where I was, location of the hospital, and what would have happened in just those 5 minutes. Say, wow, I'm very blessed.
Anyone else?
Yes, ma'am. Well, first I was pissed. And then I thought I was crazy. And somebody gave me a copy of Dr. Moody's book, Life After Life. And as I read that, I started saying, yeah, I'm not nuts after all. So once I realized I wasn't crazy, I wasn't still mad, I had to start figuring out how to be a person again. Like I said, I was afraid to walk up a set of stairs that I believe were 14 stairs to the kitchen. And I would sit at the bottom stairs and I would work my way up with my butt. I couldn't go out and cut the grass, but I was the one who had to cut the grass. So I learned still had to go to work. I went into work one place as a DJ, and they met me at the front door and they carried my stuff in. They'd never done that before, but I was grateful. And I've been grateful for everything ever since. Even things that we may not find particularly fantastic. So we learn based on the echoes of what we've been through. That make sense? Okay. Does that answer your question? Okay. I hate to strike out there. All right, anything else?
There's several others of you in here that have had near-death experiences. Raise your hand. Are you, Sandra? Okay, you have, and you have. Sandra has, and so you might want to talk with her. She was one of our speakers. Maybe y'all can exchange names and numbers, because if yours was just recently, then you probably have a lot of questions and a lot of processing to do, because you had to come back into you were an energy in heaven, and now you've come back into a physical body. It has to live in this very difficult, he called it a playground, but it's not just a playground, it's a learning lab. We're learning something, and you were brought back for a reason. And I think of all the things I've learned in the last 3 to 10 years, is that no one died or transitioned without God's permission. And when my 30-year-old nephew, this is always hard, transitioned after a drug overdose, that was probably one of the hardest things I had to reconcile. But what I did reconcile is that God would have not allowed him to overdose and die had he not served his purpose. Now, what was it that I was going to learn from his transition? So when I listened to his eulogy and I heard all the wonderful things that Max had done in his 30 years, I realized, oh my gosh, he touched so many lives with his kindness, his generous spirit, his big, huge hugs. And he had served out his time here. That's how I looked at it from that point forward. Do I miss him? Yes. Do we all miss him? But yet I realized that he served his purpose. And I'm okay with that. I'll see him again. And now I know that I have a purpose here. You all have a purpose here. Tom was sent back, even if he had been 45 minutes
Kick
from
that.
Huh?
I just want to be clear, kick that.
Well, and even if he had been 45 minutes from that hospital, if it wasn't his time, it wasn't his time. It doesn't matter about the minutes that he was from the hospital.
No.
The fact is if he's not met his contract, or he has not lived out his purpose, he is going to be sent back. And that gives me peace. So whenever it's our time, it's our time. Your wife, it was her time. My husband, it was his time. He had fought and fought and fought, but it was his time. So it's just not my time. Yeah, but it will be, yeah.
Yeah, we all go there.
We all.
Every one of us.
We'll all return.
That's exactly right. None of us get out of this alive. But I want to dispel it for myself is what I learned, and I believe some people are nervous about their loved ones spending time in the lower regions. And I had come to learn, agree, believe that there is only the one heaven. There is no punishment called hell. That was a human creation. So I want you to think about your family that you have now, family that you've lost, and remember to love them. And remember to love yourself. And talk to them as if they were sitting right next to you. Because guess what? They are.
They're just invisible, in an invisible realm.
It's a different vibration. And people, if you start looking at the physics of things, everything vibrates. Even this solid piece of fake wood has a vibration to it. We have a vibration. They have a higher vibration. So when my dad was trying to get at the cake, he really wished he had fingers. But I imagine the amount of energy it took for him just to let us know that he was there. So that's why we've got to spend, there's a lot of people out there who talk about raise your elevation and you've got energy. Be friends with God. Be friends with your neighbors. Be friends with yourself. That's all there is to it.
Okay. I was asking Tom if he brought, he has a bracelet on. He wears it all the time, and I did too for a long time. I forgot mine too, and he forgot to bring his bracelet.
Well, no, I know exactly where they are, but I only had 10,
Oh, I see.
and I
Well, look
didn't
at this
want to
now.
upset everybody.
Yeah,
So
everybody would have wanted one. It
I
says,
will-
remember to love.
it says, remember to love on one side, and then it has a little purple heart on the other. And it's a thin, so it doesn't irritate you while you're wearing it. And I find, especially in traffic, that I turn the remember to love onto the steering wheel.
I think we can all benefit from it, but.
So I will get you, I'm gonna put an order in on Monday, and when they come in, I'll get them to you.
We can have.
but
them next week.
Sorry.
Well, what we have, there's this common thread with all of our NDE speakers, and that is love. Love matters. And we had some stickers that said love matters. And it goes back always to God. It always goes back to God. And then I think about the suffering that we do, and that God, through Jesus, suffered. So we also have that as a reminder that none of us, even when we have a problem, any of us suffered like Jesus? No. So,
Yeah, staple in the hand, that's about as far as I go.
yeah, so we all, are given examples through religion, not that any one religion is right or wrong, it's just a tool to get us closer to God. But again, what we're finding in these meetings is that we don't need anything but ourselves. Love ourselves, and we can have that connection. So,
Pray, meditate and pray. Meditate, backwards. Pray so that you can ask your questions. Meditate so you can listen. They've got to change their vibration so that we can hear it. Have you ever seen the videos where somebody's crossing the street and a car is barreling down on them? And then out of nowhere comes somebody that saves this person, and then suddenly they're gone. They disappear. I don't have to think about that one. Thank you for your time, folks.
Thank
Yeah.
I do appreciate it.
we are so grateful to have come and, all of you come and hear his story. I hope you leave today with hope, and feeling love in your heart. And I hope, you join us, those of you that said you were gonna come to, Merritt Island. I hope you can come today. We don't always do this for those of you that are new. We don't always have a dinner afterwards. This was just sort of a celebration time. So please join us. We'll all get it over there about 5:15. If you get there ahead, tell them that we need a table. If you get there before me, tell them we need a table for about 12, I think. So anyway, thank you, and we'll see you June, what? 30th. Yay, yay. Okay, we'll see you then. All right, thank you all.
Thank you.